You're listening to episode 247 of The Secular Buddhist. Welcome to The Secular Buddhist. I'm Ted Meissner. The Secular Buddhist is the official podcast of the Secular Buddhist Association, a grassroots-driven effort to answer the needs of secular teaching and practice for contemporary society. The podcast has interviews and roundtable discussions pertaining to engaged Buddhist training and practice, and the SBA website has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Though the podcast focuses on core practices from a secular viewpoint, more traditional teachings are welcome and openly discussed. Bill Merklee joins us to speak about the recently retired Instant Dharma streaming radio. Hi everyone. As I mentioned in the welcome message, today we're going to be speaking with Bill Merklee about Instant Dharma streaming radio. When Bill was kind enough to join me some months ago to record this interview, Instant Dharma was alive and well and wonderful to listen to. I was saddened to get a note from Bill recently that the host, Live 365, had ceased operations. And that's something worth considering, not just impermanence in a Buddhist sense, but the very real-world result of not having support. There are so many labors of love in the world, like Bill's, that we may sometimes forget the realities of what it takes to provide them. Live 365 wasn't able to continue to operate, but if you regularly enjoy something that someone is freely giving of themselves to create, consider supporting them if you can. We're going to go ahead and publish this conversation about the retired program anyway, to honor and show our appreciation for Bill and all the others who give so generously. So sit back, relax, and have a nice blood orange tea. Our guest today is Bill Merklee. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, glad to be here.
I gotta say, this almost holds the record for one of the longest delayed interviews we've done.
I'm really sorry. I'm going to blame it on Facebook. I didn't see the email. 2 years.
We will do that. Yeah, we'll blame Facebook for folks who are listening. I'd reached out to Bill a couple of years ago on Facebook to bring him on as a guest. And due to the vagaries of Facebook, we're pointing fingers here. That message only recently got through. But I'm very glad that you're here with us. Thanks so much for doing this. And
my pleasure.
I'd like to start off by just having you tell us about your background with music and Taoism and the Dharma.
Well, music was always a big deal in my family. My dad played, and we all grew up in a school system that encouraged it. You were playing an instrument by fourth grade, and you were in the band and orchestra by the time you got to high school. So it was always a big presence in the house. And then after high school, I was playing in bands. I played mostly keyboards. And the reason I wanted to play music was because I wanted to try to give to people or make people feel what I felt when I heard the music that really worked for me. I just thought that was a really magical thing to do for people. So that was the reason to get into that. The Taoism and the Buddhism thing, I was raised Roman Catholic, but I had some doubts about a lot of it from a very young age. And then when I started to hear things, I guess in Beatles music, they had all the Eastern music influences. I started to think about maybe there are other ways to approach, I guess, spirituality, for lack of a better definition. So I was listening to that and listening to Alan Watts on WFMU. And all these things just started to converge. And I started reading books that friends of mine had, the Tao Te Ching. And at the same time, the music that I kept gravitating to were these songs that they weren't necessarily Buddhist, they weren't necessarily Taoist, but they spoke to something larger, or at least it made me feel connected to something larger. I like to tell people that when I went to see Yellow Submarine in the theater back in 1968, at the end of that cartoon, when they do It's All Too Much, that was the closest thing at that time to a religious experience I think I'd ever had. Between whatever was going on the screen and just that song, it was just very, very uplifting. And so that's the kind of music that I gravitated toward. It was always a big part of whatever spiritual thing I was going through. Almost like having a soundtrack.
And you've reminded me to watch Yellow Submarine again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's it's a basic good versus evil, but they overcome evil with music. If only that was something that could actually happen. Yeah, that was a big deal for me in 1968. And the music, and none of that music has lost its potency for me. I mean, a lot of the stuff I listen to, I listen to newer stuff, but even the old stuff just gets me every time. Like John Lennon's Mind Games. Anytime that comes on the radio or comes up in my rotation on iTunes, it just lifts me up like it always has. None of it has lost its effect.
So can you tell us a little bit about streaming radio itself? How do people listen?
Well, there are a lot of levels to that. There's the stuff that I think everybody is latching on to now, which is Spotify and Pandora. And that's one thing. They're almost trying to, you plug in some of the things that you like and they try to find music that's similar to what you've plugged in to try to expose you to more stuff. What I do is on Live 365, which lets you program your own radio station. And there's two ways to do that. You can sort of put it on autoplay, which is what I do. You upload a lot of songs and you can either have them in a sequence or you can just let them play at random, almost like your iPod on shuffle. You also have the option of going on air live, which a lot of people do. They have an interface on the computer that lets you broadcast live and queue up the songs as if it were a real radio station. So you can go to a place like Live 365, and that's the only service that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are others. And you can search on specific songs. You can search on genres. You can search on for specific broadcasters if you're familiar with who they are. And you can listen to it on your computer. You can listen to it on your mobile device. I'm pretty sure Live 365 has an app, or you can just do it through the web browser on your phone. And you just plug in and listen. What I do is it's on random. I add songs as I find them. I think the playlist has maybe 250 songs at the moment, and every time I come across something that strikes me as being that kind of a spiritual or connected song, I'll add it to the mix. And there are even holiday ones, like the holidays, the winter holidays are coming up, so I'll be adding stuff like John Lennon's Happy Christmas War is Over and all of that, just because it's seasonal. But other than that, it's just playing over and over. And I put it up there because these songs really meant something, and they mean something to me even still. And the nice thing about music is you always wanted to share it. You were always, back when we had records, if you got a cool album, you wanted your friends to hear it, and you sat down. You actually made time to listen to music. It wasn't just background. You sat there and you listened and you read the liner notes and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to share this in the hopes that it might do something for people the way it does something for me. And it was just an easy way to do it, to put it up on Live 365. So maybe people would stumble upon it. Every once in a while, I remind people that it's there on Facebook and so on. But people seem to find it, and I'm glad about that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what that's been like for you? What's the experience been like of putting this together and offering it up to people who might be interested in hearing that same thread through the music?
Well, when I put it up, I tried to categorize it as spiritual or free and in free form. They have genres that you can attach to your station. And part of the fun, especially when I first did it, was looking at the back end on Live 365. They have these sort of this dashboard where you can see how many people are listening, how long they're listening for. You can even see what songs they can check off songs if it's a favorite. Live 365 likes to show you what songs they're bailing out of your stream on. So maybe you might want to reconsider having that song on the stream, which wasn't the point of what I was doing. But I think if you're trying to do a more commercial enterprise, that might be useful. The really fun part of their dashboard were the geographic charts where it could show where people, both geographically in the United States, what areas were tuning in, but also countries. And it was really fun because a lot of the themes have to do with Buddhism. Anytime I saw somebody listening from India, it was just like, yay, score one. I saw somebody found it. A lot of the people listening tend to be from Europe and North America. I mean, maybe it doesn't matter, but it's all English speaking music. So it makes sense that a lot of people are listening from Australia and from England and Canada and the US. But it's really gratifying to see people tuning in from Indonesia and Southeast Asia and Japan and even parts of Africa. And then they can check it off if it's a favorite station, which I always like to see. I'll get an email that says somebody favorited your station. There are VIP listeners who actually pay a subscription, one, so that they don't have to listen to commercials, because Live 365 has to make their money, so they will insert commercials into my stream. But two, they get better sound quality and all of that. And a couple of the VIP listeners have made it a favorite, which is always a gratifying thing to see. A couple of people would email me and say they really enjoyed a particular song or they hadn't heard that song in a long time. And it's funny, they're not talking so much about the spiritual aspect of it, just that it was a song that meant something to them a long time ago, and hooray, I resurrected it for them. That's a lot of fun to see that you can reach people all over the globe. And it's a few hundred people at a time in any given month, but that's okay. I think with this kind of thing, even if you can just reach one or two people and you made them feel good, or the song meant, lifted them up a little bit, that's a good thing. It doesn't have to be, reaching the masses, reaching millions. If a few people each week tap into this and it does something for them, I feel good about that.
Yeah. Bill, how long has it been in operation? When did you start it?
I think it's been going 10 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, yeah. It sounds more impressive than it is, because it kind of runs itself. Once I get it loaded, it's fine. As long as I keep paying Live 365 to keep it up there, it'll keep going. I go into it, like I said, to update things seasonally, and I'll go in to add songs to the mix as I find them. But other than that, it pretty much runs itself. I go into the dashboard just to see, where the people are listening from. And like I said, I always enjoy getting the emails when somebody really likes the stream. It's not nearly as difficult as what you do.
So let's talk about something else. The name Instant Dharma, and you've got a reference to this on the site itself, but I want you to tell the story of where that name came from, what its inspiration was.
Well, it's a reference, first off, to the John Lennon song Instant Karma, which was probably one of the earliest references I ever heard as a kid to karma. And I've been a practicing Zen Buddhist for the last 5 years. So I like the idea of calling it Instant Dharma, because mainly in songs, but in other ways, you can experience these aha moments that are like little windows into the bigger picture, which is what I consider the Dharma to be. Sometimes I even think of it, it could also be the Tao. But there are these little moments that can happen, whether it's, you're getting it from the sunset, or you're getting it from listening to kids laugh, or a certain line or a certain scene in a movie. And most definitely for me, from songs, something just clicks. And that to me is almost like an instant Dharma thing. It's not, you're not grasping the totality of it, but it's giving you that glimpse that there is something bigger, and that you're part of it, and it's part of you. That's why I wanted to call it that. Much to my chagrin, I later found out that it was also the name of a episode of Dharma and Greg, but that's okay.
I don't think they could have avoided having that title at least
No,
once.
it was inevitable. Yeah, it was inevitable. That's why I like the name of it, because it is about those little quick hits that you get just by being open to it. So some people, maybe that they're looking for those things, but I think that if you can stay open to when those moments come, you'll notice them a lot more. I mean, it happens all the time. It's just an offhand remark, like I said, a line in a movie, overheard conversation, just these things get in, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's what that is. And that's what these songs did. They were all these little windows for me into the bigger picture.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What kinds of tunes do you have on there? Maybe a few that are meaningful to you and how they touched you.
There's just so many. They run the gamut. There are ballads. There are overtly Buddhist themed songs like Three Dog Nights, Shambhala, or Instant Karma, which I mentioned before. Steely Dan's Bodhisattva, which I think might actually it's a great tune. I'm just not sure. I think maybe, he's being a little sarcastic, but it's okay. We're not broadcasting hymns here. With these songs, it could be just a line of lyric that got to me, and okay, you're part of the playlist then. I made a CD once upon a time for some friends where I took about 20 out of the 200 or so songs, and I tried to see if I could like really whittle it down to a CD's worth of songs. The one that probably kicked it all off was John Lennon's Mind Games. That just opened doors for me. Just listening to the lyrics, it made me want to know what the karmic wheel was. Just lines in there about how yes is the answer, and you know that for sure. Yes is surrender. You got to let it go. That's the earliest reference I can think of for me about non-attachment and letting things go. Pure and Easy by Pete Townsend. He's not Buddhist. He was a follower of Meher Baba, but a lot of what he does, especially with the Who, was very spiritual. And Pure and Easy, there's a thing in there. There once was a note, Pure and Easy. I later read the book Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, and there's a story in there called The Note. And as soon as I read it, I'm like, I don't know if Pete ever read this, but there's the connection for me. It's that one note, which could also be the Tao. It's the thing that runs in the background of everything. Other things, Cat Stevens, Morning Has Broken. It's an arrangement of, I think, a traditional Scottish hymn. It's a gorgeous song, and the idea that every day is it's a song of renewal. Just that every day. I don't know if Alan Watts said this. Every day is a good day. I'm sure a bunch of guys have said that. But yeah, just the idea that you wake up, and just the fact that you're here, and it's something to be celebrated. And I've always loved that song. Rick Wakeman plays the piano on that, and it's absolutely gorgeous. The Byrds, Turn, Turn, Turn. It's Pete Seeger putting music to the Book of Ecclesiastes, but unbelievably good song. Rain by the Beatles. We go back to the Beatles. The idea that you create your own problems, you get in your own way. It's that one always worked for me. George Harrison, a bunch of stuff. Isn't It a Pity? All Things Must Pass. The Flaming Lips, Do You Realize? That to me is almost about as close to a secular hymn as you're going to get. Do you realize that everyone you know someday will die? But he's saying that that's not a reason to, really get down. It's just see the world for what it is, and you can still celebrate it. You can still celebrate that you get to be here. It doesn't have to be a down thing. It's almost like the evening Gatha, take heed, do not squander your life. That's all he's saying in that. But he's saying it with really great music. Find the River by REM is another gorgeous one. I have no idea what Michael Stipe intended in that song. So many of his lyrics people are still trying to figure out. But that song to me sounds like a world-weary soul passing the torch to somebody else and who's lamenting nothing's going my way. But by the end of the song, he's singing all of this is coming your way, which means just open yourself up to it. You don't have to fight it. Just for lack of a better description, go with the flow. I know that's a cliche, but that's kind of what I think he's getting at. Just open up to what's flowing in the river. Even Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind. To me, that's just a call to meditation. Just sit still and these things will come to you. It'll all be clear.
Bill, what else would you like to share with the listeners?
I think that music is a huge part of any spiritual pursuit. And this is the stuff that worked for me. And it's funny because when I was going to, when I first started going to the Sangha, we would chant things in Japanese. And I was a little perplexed by that because at the time I thought, well, this isn't much better than chanting things in Latin in church. So I didn't quite get what was going on. And then when I went to Zen Mountain Monastery up in Mount Tremper, New York, and you have this huge meditation hall with a couple of hundred people all doing these chants at once, then I got it, because then it becomes a physical thing. The vibrations just go through your chest. And I'm like, okay, now I get this. It's about the tones. It's not necessarily about so much what you're saying in Japanese. It's the feel of the music. And that's the communal thing about music. I got it then. That's part of why I put these songs up on the stream, because they do this for me. And by me putting it out there, it's sort of an attempt at community. It's an attempt to share it with people. And anytime people get together and play music, that to me is a spiritual thing. It's just something about sound that connects you to the bigger thing, whether you're chanting, whether you're strumming a guitar and singing folk songs, or whether you're playing in a band. You could be playing in a punk band. Just making that sound is a communal thing. I think that's all I was trying to do with this. It's one thing for me to sit in my room and listen to these things. I feel much better just having put them out there and knowing that people come across it and kind of understand what I'm trying to do with it. And hopefully it's doing for them what it does for me.
Thanks very much. Our guest today, Bill Merklee. You can find out more about what he's doing. I'll be linking to Instant Dharma streaming radio on the episode page for this episode. Bill, thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to hear more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the SBA website at secularbuddhism.org, and you'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. Discussion about this episode can be found on the episode page itself, along with show notes. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. The music for The Secular Buddhist is used by permission from John Kaizen Neptune's CD, Steps in Time. Additional music is provided courtesy of Monty Levinson of Taihei Shakuhachi and Rodrigo Rodriguez. Their websites are linked on the SBA site on the About Podcast Music page. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on The Secular Buddhist.